the idea from my father about starting from the floor, knowing everything, knowing how employees on the floor are actually thinking was probably one of the best advices I ever had in my life. I studied mathematics, so usually my FCs are not so happy about having a GM who is very strong in calculations.
Do you know why? Because hospitality is changing every day, daily.
Yeah.
And also the demand or requirement from our customer also change every day.
They're using the petrol car every day to drive our sustainable water there 50 kilometers and drive back 50 kilometers.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Arrival podcast on the Hotelier Vietnam, the number one podcast in the hospitality industry in Vietnam. Our guest today, Andre, Area General Manager of Ariyana Furama Tourist Complex. It means that he in charge of 3 projects in Danang here. One is Furama Resort, the other one is Furama Villas, and the third one is Ariyana International Convention Center. And thank you, Andre, for coming today, and I appreciate your time very much. Actually, Andre is very well-known person in the hospitality, especially in Vietnam. Anyways, I would like you to tell us a little bit about yourself, please. When you start your career in the hospitality, or how long you're working for Furama, or just a little bit, and what is your role in the Furama, for example, please.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me here today. It's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to a good conversation now. So yeah, I'm Andre Gensch. I'm actually originally coming from Switzerland, but my family is in Asia, in Southeast Asia, for more than 50 years. So my father was actually one of the pioneers, starting the first international hotel in Pattaya in 1970. And at that time, Pattaya was a fishing village with 2,000 people. Nothing to do with the Pattaya we know today.
It sounds very interesting, huh?
Yeah, it's a long family history in Asia. Myself, I went to study in Switzerland.
I see.
I studied mathematics, so usually my FCs are not so happy about having a GM who is very strong in calculations. I usually give them a tough time, and I often correct them even if the figures are wrong. I studied mathematics first, but then over time I realized it's actually not my thing. I'm too lively as a person. I'm too much interested in cultures and people than to sit somewhere in a laboratory and to work with figures only. So I wanted to become a general manager. That was my idea. And I went to my dad and I asked him to go to the hotel school, and he said no.
Why not?
And that was and that was actually my first lesson about hospitality and about education in hospitality. My father said, "You're not going to be one of them who goes to the hotel management school, coming back from the hotel management school, and then be some kind of GM who doesn't know what to talk about. So if you want to be a GM, you first go and learn working on the floor. You either become a chef, or you become a receptionist, or you become a waiter. When you do that for 3 or for 4 years, you can come back to me." And so I did it, and I started my career forcefully as a chef.
I see.
But I started to love it, and I finally graduated in Switzerland as the 3rd best chef in the whole county of Switzerland of my age at that time. But coming back to that, the idea from my father about starting from the floor, knowing everything, knowing how employees on the floor are actually thinking was probably one of the best advices I ever had in my life, even though I wasn't happy about it then. And then, of course, I did the usual career, I would say, of an international general manager. I worked in various countries, from Mexico to Morocco, Egypt, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Malaysia, of course, my second home, as I mentioned, because my family is based in Malaysia, actually, and also Vietnam. Going through the ranks, going through F&B, but always paying attention to the other departments as well. I always said, if I ever make it to the general manager, I don't want to be the F&B general manager.
I see.
you know. And in Vietnam, I'm now for 7 years. I work for WinPearl the first 5 years, and for the last 2.5 years with Furama. Which brings me to the point I have left actually the international brands for various reasons, which we might come back later to it, around 18 to 20 years ago. And I'm actually very, very happy to work with local brands rather than with international brands.
Do you know that it is very interesting? We have the common friends, Nicolas, who was the GM of Movenpick Hanoi,
Yes.
also from Switzerland. When I had the podcast with him, the same thing he mentioned, he started from the bottle, that means rank and file. He started also his career from the kitchen first.
Yep.
The same you guy. You follow your father advice. I think he's a very smart guy. But today, if we advise the people who want to follow hospitality, who want to be GM, whether do you think that is still correct advice or not?
Well, look, as a Swiss, I'm a little bit biased, of course, right? You see, that whole system is very deeply rooted in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria to go through the ranks. We even have it in military. You don't have something like in the United States. If you want to become a lieutenant, then you become a lieutenant without being a soldier. Even in Switzerland, you want to be a lieutenant, you start as a soldier, then you become a corporal, then you become a sergeant, and then you become a lieutenant. You cannot jump. You have to go step by step. So this is very, very deeply in our culture. Yes, your question is right in that sense. Internationally speaking, you have a lot of people from all over the world going to Switzerland, going to Australia or the States or England to a hotel management school without actually having worked for a long time in a hotel before. Personally, I still think that's wrong. You know, what's happening is this, you know, if you work for 3 or 4 or 5 years on the floor, you actually really, really deeply understand how the people are thinking. And our business, as my old teacher always used to say, is from people, us, with people, our employees, for people, our guests. So it's all about understanding people. And if you want to make the guest happy, then you have to know your employees well. Ritz-Carlton, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And that Ritz-Carlton slogan is not so wrong. So my advice is still do this. You might be a little older when you go to the hotel management school because of this. Your mates may be 20 years old, 22 years old, while you already are 23 or 24 years old. Same happened to me. But when you finish the hotel school, thanks to your expertise and thanks to your experience, you will actually make a much faster career.
I see.
In my class, I was the only one, when I left the hotel school, being already 3-4 years older, I immediately got a job with Hilton as an assistant food and beverage manager. All my other classmates, they had to start as a captain or as an assistant restaurant manager. The reason being, because I was already experienced and a little bit more mature.
Not only because you have experience, some things show that you guys also smart and talented.
And I had that little piece of luck also.
Yeah.
You know, I always put emphasis on that. We all know these people who try to, I'm sorry to say that, brag about themselves. I think people who make a career or people who are successful, they have reasons to be proud, and they can say so. But they should be humble enough, and I hope I'm humble enough to admit you need that piece of luck as well. At the right time, at the right place, the right people liking you, everything comes together. Yeah.
I like what you mentioned, talking about the people. We have to understand the people. We are talking about employee, talking about our customer. One of the key of the success for the people working in the hospitality, it is correct?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to come back talking about some people to follow hotel management, like people going to Lausanne, people going to Cornell. But people don't want to start with from the bottom of the position. They don't want to be the waiter or waitress. They don't want to be the front office junior staff, and they want to be managers
Well, absolutely. Well, look, of course, everybody wants
because they study in the top school in the world, like Lausanne or like Cornell. What would you say?
Let me tell you a little story. I do remember I made my first training, my
Yeah.
first internship at the Regent Four Seasons in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia.
Yeah.
And the general manager was an Austrian. And there were students coming from the hotel school Lausanne
Yeah.
applying for a job. I was just in an internship. I was still in the school, but they finished already the school and they applied for a job. And he interviewed them, and then he told them things like, yeah, we're going to hire you. You get a job as a captain in the fine dining restaurant. And then they were like, but I did Lausanne. And then Mr. Christoph Schmidinger, that was his name, he would tell them, absolutely, you did Lausanne.
Yeah.
I'm sure you make a career with us, and I'm sure you make it very fast. Now you start from the bottom. If you are that good as you say because of Lausanne, within 2 years you will be a manager with us. So he insisted on those people without having experience on the floor, except for the short internships, to actually go back on the floor. But he kept an eye on them. You know, he knew they have the education and the qualification, but they don't have the experience on the floor yet. So he insisted on that. And those people who went into that gamble, if I can say so, and worked for him, starting only as a captain, they usually made a very, very fast career. You know, so that has always been somehow in the back of my mind.
I get your point. But coming back for this guy, whether the guy is successful or not successful in the hospitality, the guy who studied in Lausanne.
Okay, let me tell you that in a different way.
Yeah.
When I speak to people sometimes and they ask me about the career, then I always say the beauty about the hospitality is you don't need to go to Lausanne.
I see.
You know, I met people in my life, they started as stewards.
I see.
They are now general manager. They never went to an official hotel school. They worked hard. They made their way up. Yes, they studied in their spare time. They did save a little money. Then they made the evening trainings and all that. But I remember, for example, Iftikhar in Malaysia, steward in a 5-star hotel, after 20 years general manager of a Malaysian 4-star hotel. You see, you want to become a pilot, you have to learn to fly. You want to be a doctor for heart surgery, you really have to learn your stuff. But ultimately, hospitality is about your heart, about your passion for people, and about logical thinking. What I like, unless I'm a little bit distorted, but if I'm a normal person, what I like, you will like. How I want to take care of my wife and my kids, I should take care of my guest. So in hospitality, I always say it's like this. You start your career and you have a 100-meter race. And after 100 meters, you are general manager. You know? So if you do Lausanne, you don't start at meter 0 anymore. You start at meter 20.
I see.
If you do an average hotel school, you start at meter 10. If you start as a steward, you start at meter 0. So now, 3, 2, 1, boom, run.
Yeah.
You are in Lausanne, you have an advantage. But if you're not running fast enough, the other one will become general manager and not you. And that is hospitality. Lausanne gives you the knowledge. Lausanne gives you the advantage at the beginning. But over the years, even someone who has not been in Lausanne can catch up on you.
On one side, I do agree with you guys, but what the Lausanne or Conan would say after listening to our podcast?
Well, look, of course, that doesn't dilute at all the level of the hotel school Lausanne. But you have a lot of other hotel schools, and the GMs are fantastic. Just because you do Lausanne doesn't make you the best GM. It's like with every school. Just because you go to the best university in Vietnam doesn't make you the best mathematician or psychologist or whatsoever, right? That's by no way diluting it. But hospitality is a lot of this.
I like also what you say, hospitality from the heart here.
Right.
Very good idea. And I think that from this podcast, a lot of people just following up and listening, and they learn a lot from such kind of experience as you guys. And you have been working in different places in the world, and also with different international hotel groups.
Right.
How you can adapt working from that one to the other one, because it's corporate culture, different environments. How you overcome such kind of difficulties or challenges?
Well, you see, I mean, one thing is always what I say is when you're an expat, you have to walk that thin line between adapting and not adapting. You know, like if I'm in Vietnam, you don't hire me to become 100% Vietnamese. You hire me because in some ways I am different, bringing new ideas, bringing a different approach, a different style. On the other hand, I have to go towards the Vietnamese to understand their culture. So I have to find the way between my world and the Vietnamese world. I have to adapt and yet remain myself. Or else you would say, we don't need Andre, we're going to hire a Vietnamese instead, which is absolutely the right way to do anyway, right? So for me, that's what I always try to do. I try to listen to the people, I try to observe. I was never one of those managers who changed the world in the first 4 weeks. You know, you have people, they go to a hotel, it doesn't matter if you're a GM or an HOD, and they want to put their mark. I'm here and I know everything better. And now everything has to change because of me. I always purposely made a slow start, observing. I actually, usually in the first 3 or 4 weeks, and I think it's a very successful recipe, I didn't even comment. Because you see, the moment you start commenting and say, oh, do you think this is good or this is nice, people will already start to sugarcoat, influence, not opening anymore. My experience is observe the first 3-4 weeks, just observe. Be nice, be polite. If you don't like something, take notes. Don't say anything. People will open up. You will get to know the place. And then after 4 or 5 weeks, you start step by step bringing in your ideas. So that works, because this way, people will also not be pushed away. Like, oh, who does he think he is? He knows everything better. And you know, sometimes you come and you see something and your first idea is like, oh no, I don't like it, we should change that. And later, you actually say, wait. I give you an example. When I came to Furama, I saw the white tablecloth in our breakfast room. I was like, for God's sake, I mean, let's be honest. Do you know any 5-star hotel with white tablecloths for breakfast? Practically none. You go to the Intercontinental, you go to the Pullman, you go to the Sheraton, even Sofitel, most of them don't have white tablecloths anymore for breakfast. But Furama has. So my first thing was, doesn't make sense.
Why they put it?
Right. But I kept quiet. And then after 3-4 weeks, I looked at all my notes and I said, you know what, Andre? This is actually a USP, a unique selling proposition. We are the only old-fashioned 5-star hotel still doing white tablecloths for breakfast. This is actually good because it's old-fashioned 5-star style. You know, so think about it, especially when you're new. And that's then how you can adapt to the other, to the new cultures, to the different places.
Actually, just when you mentioned about that one, I want to talk a little bit about that one. We are talking about the unique and different old-fashioned. Also, because we just did the podcast and hotel tour of Pan Pacific Hotel in Hanoi, Americans guests group, they choose Pan Pacific. Also because of old-fashioned style of the hotel.
Yeah.
I'm talking here positive, not negative, no complaint at all about or aging the hotel, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what American said? Why I need to stay in modern hotel? I can see everywhere in the United States, and those people, they selected and they decide to stay in Pan Pacific because they don't see the high-rise building with full of the glasses, with the modern equipment, blah, blah, blah. They want to see what in Vietnam in the old time.
Yeah.
So exactly, you make something unique and different, even old style, but it's charming also. Yes, and make people just decide to come to experience your properties. But I think that here I already have experiences at the breakfast and lunch, dinner in your place. I think that they are right, and you are right that they put the white tablecloth because they have reasons. But coming back, when you work different places in the world, I'm not talking only about adaptations. You should be adapt. But when you work in a European country, you work in the Africa or in other places, what you learn from that one, not only about just you should be adaptable, how you can just withdraw the lessons.
Well, first of all, I think you learn at some point of time that there is no right or wrong. You know, so you learn to understand that there is different points of view and there is different approaches. So, for example, I say now a very, very simple example, right? It's just, you look at the color of the carpet, right? Now we could talk about recipes, menus, about Wi-Fi, but let's take a very simple example, the color of the carpet. I look at the color of the carpet and it's green, right? And I look at it and I don't like green because I don't like green, right? That doesn't make it wrong, just because I don't like it, you know? Just because I want the plate to be served this way, that doesn't make it wrong if somebody else serves the plate in another way, as long as it follows certain technical rules or classical ways of doing so. You know, I think what one should learn is really to say, what do I want to do as an expat manager? What do I want to change as an expat manager? And what should I leave? Because it's good the way it is, you know, it's not wrong just because I don't like it. You know, I think that's one of the things, because you see, what I noticed is many, not all, but many managers, as I say, they go to a place and they know everything better than. So you are a young F&B manager, I did that mistake too. You go to a hotel, now you're the new F&B manager in this hotel, and this is not good, and this is not good, and this is not good, as if the F&B manager before you was not a professional. And of course that's not true. The F&B manager before you was most likely a professional too, unless he got fired and you replaced him. But he had a different opinion. So I don't have the right to come and to talk bad about the way they work now and to judge about the way they did it under my predecessor. But many actually do that. That's one of the things I learned, don't do it. He had a different style, he had a different way. Maybe he had different priorities or a different vision, but it's not wrong. Yeah.
Correct. So, how come you become to work for VinGroup?
How come I came to work
for VinGroup?
That's actually a very funny story. I worked for 2.5 years as a general manager in Kuala Lumpur, right in the middle for Petronas. Petronas owns the traders, the Mandarin Oriental and the Impiana. So I was one of the GMs there. And after 2.5 years, I planned to leave, and I wanted to take a sabbatical actually of 2 or 3 months.
I see.
And then me being old-fashioned, before Christmas, I would send all the Christmas wishes to my friends. Nowadays, of course, email or WhatsApp,
Yeah,
right? And that was nearly 10 years ago, and I sent all the Christmas wishes. And then there was this old colleague of mine, I worked with him in Abu Dhabi before, Roland, and I said to him, Merry Christmas, Roland. And he replied, hey, Andre, how are you? Message. I'm like, all good. He's like, what's up? What's up, Andre? Very short messages only. And I'm like, well, I'm in Malaysia. I've been general manager here for 2.5 years, but I'm going to leave the place here in 6 weeks. I want to take a sabbatical, and then I will look for a new assignment. And his reply was, what about Vietnam? And the rest is history. Afterwards, it went very, very fast. He recommended me to the CEO. The COO recommended me to the chairwoman of WinPearl, right? And then they interviewed me. Funny, because I was already then leaving for my sabbatical, and I was in Switzerland.
I see.
So they interviewed me, not the chairwoman, but the CEO of WinPearl, and he said at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't want them to know that I am not in Malaysia anymore, that I'm in Switzerland. So I said, all good and fine. So I was in the living room at home. I stayed with my mom. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I was interviewed in the pyjama.
I see.
And I just put the jacket, and here was the pyjama. And my mom was there, and she was like, what are you doing? And she said, don't worry, they can't see. They only see the top. And I got the job. And 2 years later, I say to the CEO, do you know that you actually interviewed me in my pyjama? Yeah.
So, working with VinGroup in Vietnam and work in Malaysia, is there any difference or
Work with VinGroup and work with?
In Malaysia.
In Malaysia.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I have to go a little bit back here. I worked for 4 seasons. I worked for Hilton before, and especially with Hilton, I was moved around. And 2002, I moved to Dubai, 2 months before the second Gulf War, and I worked for the Oasis Beach Hotel, which belonged to Jebel Ali Hotel, which was my first assignment for a local hotel group. But the Jebel Ali Hotel at that time was the 5-star hotel of Dubai, right? At that time, Dubai was pretty much sand, but it was right at the beginning of the boom.
But now many hotels there now. Huh?
Oh, and I was in Dubai for 8 years, and basically while I was there, it was mushrooming, virtually mushrooming, you know. What I noticed, to answer your question, is when you work for local companies, a lot is possible. A lot is more difficult. The rules and regulations are not that much set in stone, like in an international company like Accor or IHG. So on one hand, you have a struggle. You have to fight more because not everybody is crystal clear. But on the other hand, when you do a good job and when you know how to handle, then you can go so much further. So basically you have on one hand the disadvantage that not all the rules are set in stone in a local company, but at the same time you have the advantage that all the rules are not set in stone. So now it's up to you on how you do it. And frankly speaking, my experience is if you do well with the owners, a lot is possible. And that is where, for example, I always defend WinPearl. You know, we all, let's be honest, there is a lot of stories in the hospitalities about WinPearl. I really have to say, WinPearl does a lot of good things, and WinPearl, while being tough on one hand and being very demanding, WinPearl also can take very much care.
I see.
What a lot of people don't know, WinPearl is one of the only hotel groups in Vietnam paying full salary for all the employees during COVID, from steward to general manager. Nobody talks about this. You know, this has to be said as well. And that is what I mean. Anything is possible with a group like WinPearl, Furama, Oasis, or when I was with Petronas, a Malaysian company, oil, petroleum, right, in Kuala Lumpur.
That is why a lot of people working for VinGroup before, and they are very proud of that one. And also it is one of the advantage because the benefit for employee, we can say that is very good one. But some expert GM said that not easy to work with VinGroup. How you would say?
I'm actually
And what is your advice?
I'm actually often defending VinGroup. I mean, let's be very clear. It is not easy to work for WinPearl. Let's talk about WinPearl, okay? It is not, and I'm talking about my days, which was obviously a few years ago. I can't judge how it is now. But it used to be not easy for WinPearl, you know? Like some people would say it's different. But whenever before I worked for international hotels, I heard the same. When I went with Hilton to Morocco, oh, it's different. When Hilton moved me to Egypt, I heard in Egypt, oh, it's different. When I was with Four Seasons in Malaysia, it's different. Everywhere it's different. Everybody has his own style. Everybody has his own challenges. That's number one. Number two, of course, if you are an expat GM or an expat HOD, and you decide to work for a local company, then you have to be mentally ready for a local company. So, you know, I met GMs, expat GMs and expat HODs. They're fantastic GMs. They have great credentials. They really did a good job. But they have been working for international companies for 20 years, inside a bubble. I mean, to simplify it, okay? It's, of course, it's not that simple, but to simplify it, if I work for Pullman in Bangkok, in Cairo, and in Jakarta, it's still Pullman. It's still the Pullman system. It's still the Pullman salary, blah, 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 blah. Adapted to the local culture, adapted to the local laws, but it's the Pullman bubble, you know? And that one, of course, I simplify now, right? I want to be fair to the people. And that one, when you leave your Pullman bubble after 20 years and you go to WinPearl and you expect to find something like this, then I question if it's the mistake of WinPearl or if it's your mistake that you cannot adapt anymore. And again, these are great people doing amazing jobs for the Pullman, for example, but they were not able. And the last thing I want to say is, you know how it is when people leave a job or lose their job. It's always the boss who is guilty. So when I have people to resign from Furama, right, or we have to terminate someone, they're not going to go home to their wife and say, I got terminated because I did a bad job, right? They will say, I left the company, or I was fed up because they don't know what they're doing, you know. So there were some expats, some HODs, some GMs. Yes, you can question the way WinPearl was finishing the contract with them. Some. But there were the others who didn't do their job. So, you know, you always have to listen to both sides. So we have to be a little bit more fair to WinPearl. It's not an easy company, but not every story is true.
I get your point, but still some people want to get to know how you would advise the people if they want to work longer for VinGroup, what they should do. I like VinGroup very much. I like the way people doing and the way just they handle with employee and the way they offer on the good thing to employee. And I have a lot of friends who are working work and currently working for VinGroup. But some people, some experts, they have no idea when they jump up, and it's very hard for them to start at beginning. What is your advice?
You see, I think you need to be patient. I think WinPearl, what you need to understand is this. Normally, let's say somebody hires me as a general manager. They hire me and say, you are a general manager, you know what you're doing, here is the job, we trust you, right? Because yes, you are hired as a general manager. Now WinPearl still hires you as a general manager, but you need to prove them first that you're actually worth it. You know, and not everybody can take that. And it's understandable. If I'm 10 years a general manager and I go to a new hotel, hey, I'm a general manager. Give me the trust. Let me do my job. So I understand that these people have difficulties and are upset. But WinPearl will hire you for your qualifications, hoping that you are as good as what you say, but you need to build up trust with them over time. And that was probably what happened to me. I was lucky also, of course, but I think I did some good things in Fukuoka. I was at the right time at the right place, and I was actually able over several months to build up trust. And then over years. And I was actually allowed by WinPearl to do things which other GMs were not allowed to do. But that was because over time I built up trust.
The matter of trust. Yeah.
Right. So it's basically like when you come out of a hotel school. I have the qualifications, and now you say yes, but first you need to prove, even if you have the qualifications. And WinPearl is a little bit like that, even though you are for 10 years a general manager already.
Why we are talking a lot about the VinGroup and WinPearl? Because you guys also successful in VinGroup. I'm talking about that other thing. You did training on the potential managers. To my knowledge, WinPearl have about or training 2,000 potential managers to be trained and to become general managers or to become HOD. And you get involved a lot in this process, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, it wasn't 2,000 managers, but possibly 2,000 people got screened to become managers.
Candidate.
Ultimately, there were 4 programs. One was called the GM30, which was the goal to actually create 30 Vietnamese GMs. At the end, it turned out it was 30 GMs who went into our training. Only 17 made it to the end. Because we always, it was basically you don't perform enough, or we see you're actually not the person, then no. Then we had a second training, which we called the GM70. So at that time we were smarter already. We called it the GM70 because we knew 70 people are going into the class, but 70 people are not going to make it. We had the HOD 300. Yeah. The HOD 300 was 300 department heads, housekeeping, food and beverage, and other departments, and we trained them. That was also a full training program. And we had the HOD 100. That was amazing from VinGroup, I have to say, where actually the chairman gave us the permission to bring 100 Vietnamese talents for 3 weeks to Malaysia to work in a hotel in Malaysia. Oh. Fully paid everything by VinGroup, including the hotel in Malaysia. Yeah. That was absolutely amazing. So all these trainings were meant for mainly Vietnamese. We had very few exceptions, non-Vietnamese on the HOD level, but 98% Vietnamese. GMs all only Vietnamese. And it was a mix between campus style, going for 5 days to Nha Trang, or for 5 days or 3 days to Fukuoka, focusing on one subject, then going back to the property, working there, in the meantime getting some assignments. We did that with our own training material, but we also worked together with a Malaysian hotel school. And when it came to the general managers, we actually brought in 4 retired general managers, all highly decorated, around 60, 62 years old, and they actually came for coaching. So they would actually be with this general manager candidate, like a coach, following them 3 weeks in the property.
Just for follow up and to see how people can learn, how the
telling them how to speak to the staff, how to guide the morning meeting, observing, then taking them on the side, giving them feedback, coaching, mentoring for 3 weeks. That was also absolutely amazing. And the result was that we had a couple of Vietnamese becoming general managers, and some of them really became good.
I see. How long does it take for the program? I'm talking about the managers program, general managers.
Let's talk about the general managers program. GM30 was 5 or 6 training courses of 3 to 5 days, spread over 1.5 years, plus the 3 weeks coaching mentoring, plus another 2 weeks follow-up on the coaching mentoring, and the assignments in between. Yeah.
What kind of training you gave it to people? Not only you mentioned to me that 1 week just they learn and 1 week go to work, but you focus on finance or you focus on management skill, or what kind of subject you touch people?
Well, there we come to the different sessions, to the different modules. So we would, for example, go to Nha Trang for 4 days, and we would focus 4 days on financial management only. Or we would go to Da Nang for 4 days, and we would focus 4 days on food and beverage. Or we would go to Phu Quoc, and we would focus 4 days on housekeeping. So there was always a focus on one or the other subject. And of course, it also included leadership, it included human resources, it included sales and marketing. It also included grooming. You know, I mean, most of the GM candidates were young guys, young gentlemen, young ladies. But they didn't really dress like you wanted it yet, you know. So I made it a point. When I went to the classroom, I was always dressed up, you know, learning by example. And I'm so glad I actually could really see over the 1.5 years how some of them started to change. You know, and suddenly after 1 year they would come and, oh yeah, I made, you know, Mr. Andre, I made 4 suits in Hoi An. I'm like, wow, it works.
I see.
You look so different now.
One of the very interesting subject talking about the training of Accor is the grooming and attitude. Exactly the same thing you guys talking about. But did you get involved in processing of interviewing and selecting the candidate? I'm not talking about you conduct a training, I'm talking about the you.
Yes, I mean, we were a team. We were guided by Miss Nelly, Miss An Phong. She's now the COO of TNT Hospitality, right? She was the leader, and then it was me, basically her left hand, and then we had another 2 ladies who helped us a lot. But yes, we for example, for the GMs, we would have a panel of 3 or 4 people, and what we would do is we would actually interview them, for example, in Hanoi, 100 people on a day, right? Out of these 100 people, we would select maybe 20 or 25 people we thought they could be potential. So it was 3 or 4 people, you know, it's a little bit like Asia Got Talent. You get interviewed by 3 or 4 people and then up or down, which of course we told them later, not immediately. Then we choose like 20 or 25 people, and they went to the next round. And the next round would actually be a get-together, for example, in Da Nang. And during those 3 days get-together, we would give them the first lessons. We would go and make team building with them, running, hunting, whatever, you know. We would have games in the evening, we would laugh and eat. But what they didn't know, we would actually really observe them.
Yeah.
So after these 3 days, we would have that interview. We would see how they were as a team player. We would have a psychologist. We would actually make tests. You know, we would give them those tests, which they have to fill in, like in some hotels you have to do when you apply for a job, you know. And we would see how they study and how they learn, you know. So it gave a full picture, and only then you would make it into the training.
So, based on which criteria you decide to select this candidate, not other candidate, and what do you think the most important quality of potential general managers in general? What are most important essential qualities?
Well, you see, what we noticed is we had actually quite a lot of candidates who were a bit arrogant.
I see.
And we always said one of our job was to tell them that you don't know anything yet. They all come and they think they know everything, and no, you don't. That's why you are here now, and that's why you want to come to the training. So obviously, like I said, it's a combination. Are you a team player? Are you able to learn? Are you punctual? The discipline. We checked on the discipline. If you come 2 times late in 5 appointments during these 3 days, I'm sorry, then there is a basic problem. How do you speak? But also, especially, how open-minded are you to learn? Because ultimately,
I like that one.
it's very important. You need to have that openness, and you need to have that willingness to understand, I'm coming here to learn. I am not Mr. Know-it-all. We had people 23 years old, we interviewed them and said, so you are here, why? Silly question, right? Because I want to be a general manager, of course. Yeah, so how long will you think it's going to take you? 1 year. All right, 1 year. Why do you think you want, and that's a true one, for example, why do you think you can be a general manager here? I was an owner representative I can say that now after many years, I was an owner representative for VinGroup at JW Marriott, 22, 23-year-old girl, and I can see I know better than the GM there. And that was, I don't remember right now his name, but the opening GM of JW Marriott. Very flamboyant guy, but very good, very professional. Tyson, I think was his name. Very, very professional, very experienced. And she has the guts to say, I observed all these things in the hotel. I know better than him. You want somebody like this in your training program? We said to her, look, I'm so sorry, but you need to become a little bit more humble, and you need to get back. You think because you were 1 year the owner representative, walking around, never being to a hotel school, you're walking around and seeing a few things in the hotel that you are better than the general manager? I'm sorry. Yeah. Open-mindedness is the key always. It doesn't matter if you're a student of 18 years old or an old GM like me. We always keep on learning, and we only can do that if you're open-minded.
You mentioned to me you gave assignment to all the candidate or student, what we say, whether the program or the training course is so hard, because I remember some of my friends who were GM at the 5-star and prestigious hotel, even like at the Metropole. One of my friends, GM, he's a very smart guy. After then, he went to Cornell to study.
Yes.
He said, the program is so hard. I had to spend a lot of time and my energy to study to complete the program. Whether the training program at VinGroup, the same thing or different, or it's easy to take it.
All right, of course.
It's not easy to compare, but we want to know that...
I think we can compare 2 or 3 things. Of course, we are not on the level of Cornell, but I would reply to this gentleman, I would say, so why do you go for a training program in Cornell? Did you think it's a piece of cake? What is an MBA in Cornell? What is if Cornell says we only take general managers, or you must have minimum 5 or 8 years experience in an executive position? Yeah, that means obviously they are very, very demanding, and you're not walking in and just get it done like that. Look, what is a successful training? And that doesn't matter if it's Cornwall or WinPearl. I always explain it to students with sports. Roger Federer, one of the best tennis players ever. Roger Federer had a coach. Does the coach know how to play tennis better than Roger Federer? No. Roger Federer is better than his coach, but he still needs a coach. And what does the coach do? He pushes him. You see that in swimming and in running, it's the coach who says, run faster, you're not fast enough. Now Roger Federer could turn around and say, what are you telling me? I'm running faster than you, I'm swimming faster than you, I'm playing better tennis than you, what do you have to tell me? You need that coach to push you to the limit. If you want to train your body to become faster, You have to go where it hurts, right? They always say, as long as you run and it doesn't hurt, you will not become faster. You have to push your limits. Pushing your limit means hurting. Hurting means becoming better. That doesn't only go for the body, it's the same for the brain. It's the same when you go to a management school. You have to push the limits. You want to become better, it doesn't matter if it's Cornell level or Wimper level, you have to push the people to the next limit. And it has to hurt in reasonable limits. Otherwise the people don't learn and become better.
I am convincing. I like it.
It's the same like your kids in school.
Yeah.
You know, the same story, right?
Yeah.
They're crying because they have to learn for the math test. But that's how they learn it. If you tell them, oh no, honey, you know, you don't need to, I know it's painful, so you don't need to do it, then they never learn it.
Correct. Some people become general managers who manage different properties of VinGroup. Do you remember any successful case or any outstanding GM you want to tell people or for people to follow? Or?
No, I would say, I mean, it's not on me to judge who made a good job in VinGroup or in VinPearl and who didn't do a good job. I wouldn't like to go into that because ultimately what I saw was with the limitations. Look, it was a huge company with 35, 40 hotels at that time all over Vietnam. So I wouldn't be in the position to judge on that. What I can say is, and now we're talking about the Vietnamese, right? What I can say is we had a couple of young Vietnamese. They went to our training. Some of them actually were before already in a hotel school, but they still went, some not. And we had various of them who really, really surpassed our expectations. And when I look at some of them today, they are a match for any expat GMs. Not all, but some.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't like to mention names because I don't think it would be fair for the others.
I see.
Yeah.
Some of my friends, they are owners and investors, and they also want to invest in the tourist college. And they also want to carry out the training process for potential managers for Vietnamese people. Whether do you think that it's worth they should do it or they should not do it, and why?
Okay. Number one, very short, yes. But you wouldn't like that.
People listen here because they want to listen from you.
Okay, I would like to separate it again, and I would like to expand your question because it's really something I was actually just speaking about in a panel discussion 10 days ago in front of the Swiss ambassador and various representatives of Vietnamese hotel schools in Hanoi. And there a similar question came up. Vietnam has a lack of quality education in hospitality right now. This is for rank and file level as well as for management level. All right, the Swiss government has right now a project called Swiss Tourism for Sustainable Development in Vietnam. It's a whole team paid by the Swiss government to support sustainable development in Vietnam. Half is sustainability in terms of ecological, social, economical, and the other half is human resources. All right, and they made a study and they came to the conclusion that in the next couple of years, Vietnam needs 8,000 educated hospitality managers. From housekeeping to food and beverage to finance, 8,000, and there are not enough quality schools to do so. There are a lot of schools, but many of them focus on the lower level. Right? So, yes, there is a demand, and if you do it the right way, you can be successful. But please, you know, and if there is an investor and he wants to do that, then please do it not only as an investment. Please remember, if you open up a school, you're actually creating lives and futures. So schools are about making money too nowadays. We totally understand that, but it has to be a quality product and not just a making money product. So that one about the management level. Talking about the vocational level, and that's what I would like to talk about. We have a massive lack of chefs, waiters, receptionists, and everywhere in Vietnam we are crying. There are two problems. The problem number one is we as hoteliers, including the Hotel Association, we only cry for employees when we need them. But we don't do anything before. Basically, I'm guilty too. I go to my human resource manager and say, I need 5 chefs. And then she's plucking on Facebook and everywhere, 5 chefs, right? Where to get 5 chefs, you know? But you see, these 5 chefs, or these people who are not chefs now, they decided 5 years ago not to become chef. When they were 14, 15 or 16. That's the age when you say, should I be a chef? Or should I work for a telephone company? Or should I go and study economics? That's the age. We are doing nothing, as far as I can see, in Vietnam to create a positive vibe about hospitality jobs. To tell the young people of 14, 15 years old, hey, it's cool to be a chef. Hey, it's fun to work in a hotel. And that would be even more important now after COVID, where we actually have that damaged reputation of not being secure. There is a crisis, they will fire you. So we should actually do public relations now with the young people in order to find chefs in 5 years from now. So now let's assume you want to become a chef. How you learn that? Usually in Vietnam you go to a hotel school. You are 2 years, 3 years in some kind of hotel school, and you learn everything a little bit. Nothing against those schools. But then afterwards you come out of the school and you're actually not a good chef. Because you learned a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and everybody learns the same. You're not specialized, and half of your class leaves the hospitality, and the other half, 1/3 becomes a chef, 1/3 becomes a receptionist, 1/3 becomes waiters. I would say Vietnam should implement the dual system, which is very successful in Switzerland, Germany, and Korea. What is the dual system? The dual system is when you are, let's say, 17 years old and you say, I want to become a chef. We're always talking about chef now, but I think it's a good example. What they do then is this. You get an assigned hotel where you work as a chef. 4 days a week, you work as a chef in the hotel. 1 day a week, you go to school and you learn step by step everything about being a chef. Knowledge about food, vitamins, how to cut, how to cook, everything, over 3 years. And 1 or 2 days you have day off. What's the advantage of this system? Especially think about Generation Z. Number one, you get a salary from day one on. It's not like you go to university, your parents still have to pay money, have to support you, and you're not earning anything. No, you don't get a full salary because you're only working 4 days. But from day one on, there is a salary, which will help so many families who are struggling. You know. Number two, whatever you learn in school, you're practicing immediately in the hotel. You know, so you're actually, when you finish your chef education after 3 years, you are good. You know theory and you know practical, and your family and yourself had less of a financial burden. I think this would be the way forward for Vietnam. And you know what would be the biggest advantage for us hoteliers even? We need employees now. Those employees are not 3 years in university and we have to wait for 3 years. They are coming to work for us right away, 4 days a week. It's a total win-win situation. Financially, in terms of hiring people immediately to work, in terms of becoming professionally, because you see day by day, we spoke about this in school, and that's now I can see how we do this.
It's more useful also, they have motivation and more interesting for people.
Right. So me, yes, finally coming back, Yes, there is a demand for management schools in Vietnam. If you do that the right way and if you do it good, then you can do that. But I believe there is a much higher demand for good vocational schools in Vietnam.
I see.
Koto. Koto
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Hanoi. That's a good vocational school. I mean, I spoke to GMs in Hanoi and I asked GMs, like you mentioned the Pan Pacific. I asked the GM on Pan Pacific, what are you doing if you get a CV from Koto? You know what he said? We don't even look at it. We take them right away. They are the best.
Because the Koto, they have very good training program and have
Correct.
very good reputation.
Right, but they have a proper
Exactly.
vocational training program, and that is what is missing in Vietnam.
Last week, I met the lady just arrived from the USA. She's the chairwoman now of Koto. I think that she should be very happy to follow and to listen our podcast today. But next time, I will arrange for us to see her in Hanoi whenever you are coming to Hanoi.
Certainly a pleasure to do so.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about your experiences, your knowledge, and working different places, particularly in VinGroup. Now, how come you moved to work for Furama?
It wasn't because I was not happy with VinGroup, as I said, and I have to be grateful that they took very good care of me during COVID. It was two reasons. Reason number one is I didn't look for a job. Dr. Hung actually wanted to hire me. He saw me on 2 or 3 occasions and he told his secretary, I want him. And then they chased me, and that was impressive. They called me in March, they called me in April, they called me in May, even Dr. Hung himself, And then, of course, you start to thinking like, wow, the owner, really comes and says, hey, That's number one. Number two, while VinGroup as such took very good care of me, and Vin Pearl, the head office, the people in Phu Quoc during COVID left me alone very much.
I see.
And it's hard when you are Phu Quoc, we're talking Phu Quoc, when it's hard in that isolation for 1.5 years more or less in Phu Quoc, and even the people around you, they, I understand they were all busy with their own problems, but of course. So I came to the idea that it's time for a sabbatical to see my children. I'm divorced, my children live far away from me. I came to the conclusion it's time for a sabbatical. I want to have 1 or 2 months off. And the lady then in charge of me, she was actually very fair and polite, and she offered me 3 months sabbatical. Which was very nice and fair. But I wanted 6 months, and I wanted to be sure during those 6 months I have total peace.
I see.
And in order to have total peace, you better leave the job, and then you start a new job. And not you are on a sabbatical, but you don't have your peace because your hotel is still somehow running and you still have to follow on that. So it was more a combination of COVID, me looking for peace, looking for a long time seeing my children, and Dr. Hung thinking I'm the right person for the place here.
He's a smart guy. Also, he's very famous in Vietnam and in the world now. How you start working with Furama? Difficult, easy, or struggling, or?
Now, I have to say, when I came to Furama, we have 2 people here. One is Mr. Quinn and one is Mr. Nam. And they were actually very accommodating. They were also guiding. Of course, when I joined Furama, I had to find a little bit my way. I also did once or twice a little bit of things which were not 100% within the Furama philosophy. After 5 years Vin Pearl, you have to adapt to the philosophy. Then Mr. Quinn would call me to his office and tell to me in a very nice way, very respectful, look, Andre, this is Danang, this is not Phu Quoc. People in Danang think differently. And this is what we want in Furama. So overall, I had, I think, quite a good start. It went very, very well. thanks to the support of these two people. I really have to say that was one of the easier places to start work. And they also allowed me what I usually do, that time of observation. Mr. Quinn was very clear. He demands results from me, but not immediately. So that gave me that 1 or 2 months time to observe first, which I like anyway, you know. Yeah.
It's good that you have the people to support you guys. And also Furama is very famous resort in Vietnam. One of the thing people often talking about Furama, it is culinary resort.
Yes.
When you took over property you manage, how you can maintain and to make it in the better way?
I have that slogan. And all my employees, my team, they all know my slogan. And this is, we do everything a little bit better. Which is basically nothing else than Kaizen or Plan, Do, Check, Act, as another concept is called, which means basically, you know, Kaizen and Plan, Do, Check, Act is doing everything a little bit better. You basically are here, and then you say, how can we do better? And then how can we do better? So every time you move a little bit up, and then you say, what can we do better now? What can we do better now? And that's how the Japanese Kaizen became so successful 30, 40 years ago, right? And so I do the same, you know, we do everything a little bit better and we question everything. So we look at this glass. Is it nice? Yes. Can we do something better? And then most people would say, oh, no, you know, it's nice, it's okay, and it's all that. Yeah, maybe we should put an ice cube in. Okay, we can put an ice cube in. How can we make the ice cube a little bit better? Yeah, maybe we should have an ice cube with a little piece of lemon inside the ice cube and not over there, so it looks a little bit fun. Yeah, maybe we should have a round ice cube, you know? So you can question everything. And I'll do that, but I go slowly, step by step. So now we look at this, now we look at this, now we look at... And then after 3-4 months, I come back and say, last time we put the ice cube with the lemon, what can we do a little bit better? Yeah, you know, sir, some people think they love the ice, but after some time the drink gets too cold. Okay, so maybe we should put a ball on the side with a spoon or a tongue so that people can move the ice out a little bit better again, you know, and so on and so forth. So that's how I look at it, and it doesn't matter if you're talking here about decoration, about in-room amenities, about check-in procedure, about equipment or culinary resort. You go, you have a look, what can we do a little bit better this time? And then again, and then again, and then again. And you need to do that in a place like Furama, because the Furama is an established, successful hotel. It has its style. You're not coming to the Furama and says, now you change everything. For this, it has too much history, a legacy as well, where it actually follows its way. So you need to change that way slowly. And you also have employees here, which is a good thing, working 20 years here. It's so much easier to work in a brand new hotel where every employee is new. You tell them whatever you want. In Furama, they are here for 20 years. Sir, yes, but you know, we do it like this for many years and everybody is happy. So you have to go slowly, step by step, to make them understand. They are not unwilling, but sometimes you have to explain to them why we need to move forward, even though it is successful already.
Do you know why? Because hospitality is changing every day, daily.
Yeah.
And also the demand or requirement from our customer also change every day. So it's good that we should also just be ready and to move forward in the better way. Even we are doing one, but we want to do better and better.
You remind me of my father. You know, my father was a very famous hotelier in Malaysia. He actually even became a medal from the government. And my father always used to say, hospitality is a continuous change in a continuously changing environment.
Yesterday we talked about, I like what you talked yesterday, about the key point of the hospitality. Can you share a little bit for our audience?
You
on
mean in
the
terms of
hotel-
training?
In terms of training, you're talking very repeat and repeat, blah,
Yes,
blah, blah.
yes, correct.
2 points.
Yeah. There are two things most hotels do wrong. All right, and it's actually so basic.
Yeah.
The first thing is most hotels training is one time only. So they come to you and say, look, this is how you serve the water. Now, if you do the trainer, yes, he will say this is to serve the water. Now you please do the water, and you do the whole the trainer thing, right? Which is good. Show him, explain him, let him do himself. But then they never repeat. You know, now if you want to learn Vietnamese, you can show me Xin Chào means hello. You can explain to me Xin Chào, blah, blah, blah. That's why it means hello. It's a combination of 2 words. And you can tell me, now you say Xin Chào. And I say Xin Chào. Tomorrow I have forgotten it. Right? So even if you do a proper trainer training, you need maybe 3 days later, you need to redo it. Just a short version. You know, basically you say, now, Peter, come. Nguyen, come. Nguyen, please serve me the glass of water. I want to check. And then after another 3 days, and another 3 days, and then it's there. You know, or you do it after 3 days, and then you do it after 2 weeks, and then you do it after 3 months. You know, this is like the fire drills. Like we are all so good. We all do our fire drills once a year. Do you think after 8 months when a fire breaks out, our staff remembers? They don't. I don't remember. Because my security, I told them very clearly, any training you do in terms of safety, you know, like how to use the fire extinguisher or fire drill, 1 week to 2 weeks after the first training, you do it one more time. Repeat, 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 repeat. You did not learn English without repeating. And you're never going to be a very good hotel if your training program does not include a control system of 2 to 3 times repeating the training so it goes into flesh and blood and bone. Now, that's the first one. The second one is what I call 100% training attendance. That's another fantastic one. Most hotels, they have this training sheet, and then you write department, food and beverage department, training subject, how to serve a glass of water, right? And then the date and the time, and then there is a list of employees who attend. Everybody fills in. The problem is when you do that training, one part of the employees isn't on shift, one part of the employees is on holidays or sick or on leave, and another part of the employees have to take care of the outlet. So most hotels then are so smart, luckily, and say, we do a second training. You know, we do one in the morning shift, we do one in the afternoon shift. You're still missing 1/3 of your employees, you know. And then you wonder why the guest is complaining that the water is not properly served. Yeah, because 2 of your employees were not present at the training, you know. I mean, and you cannot go back then to the guest and say, oh, you know, sir, it was bad luck. He had his day off. Imagine, God forbid, imagine airline industry, they would do that. The Vietnam Airlines would have an accident, they crash. And then Vietnam Airlines says, oh, I'm so sorry, the pilot had day off when we had the training. Impossible. A pilot missing a training, if he doesn't do it, he's not allowed to fly. But we in the hospitality, you miss 20% of the employees miss the training. Oh, it's all good, it's all okay. That's not how you achieve it. So what should you do? You should actually have a training file which says the same. F&B department, how to serve a water glass, a glass of water. But you don't put the date up there because now you have a list pre-printed of all your employees. And instead that the name of the employees means he attended the training on the 25th, you have a column, and in this column you fill in when they did the training.
I see.
So you will have 70% of the staff that did the training on the 14th of September, and then another 5 employees did it on the 18th of September, and then another 3 did it on the 20th, and you will always see the remaining gaps.
Yeah, correct.
It's so simple. 100% training attendance, a big weakness in the hospitality. Repeat, 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 a big weakness. You do those 2 things, your hotel will immediately move up the service level.
Good idea. Well, other thing I want to talk about the Furama. Not only culinary resort or with different activities or advantage, blah, blah, blah. One, the thing is unique of the Furama is we are talking about the sustainable development.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the streets organization we are talking about, and now for Furama, what you guys are implementing or what you are doing regarding the sustainable development.
Well, you see in Vietnam often when you talk about sustainability, people use sustainability as another word for going green. And that's just one part of sustainability, right? And we're trying actually to look at sustainability, what they call the 5S, which is social, economical, it's about the environment, it's about the nature, and. So it has a lot of aspects which basically create a whole fashion word ecosystem of sustainability, right? And that's what we are trying to do here. So, do we do the environmental thing? Yes, of course we do it like everybody else. We have actually in the meantime our own water plant, you know, but you see that's already where we're trying to do things a little bit better. Because we were actually looking for water bottled in the glass like so many others do. And then we said, wait. The water plant factory is 50 kilometers away. They're using the petrol car every day to drive our sustainable water there 50 kilometers and drive back 50 kilometers. I mean, this is greenwashing. You know, are you doing something good here? Yes. Are you adding another 100 kilometers every day? Yes. So we actually created our own water plant. So we're not only reducing plastic, but we're also reducing carbon monoxide, no petrol anymore, because it's all produced here and delivered with the buggy, with the electrical buggy. And then, of course, we do like what everybody else does. We also have our food farm. We're trying to reduce electricity. We're trying to look right now into solar panels for the hotel. So I would say this is what can be expected. In addition, we are really trying to work together with the community. So we have the Taya House, our new restaurant, which is at the same time not only a wellness dining restaurant, but it's also a cultural community center. So we are having there, for example, book readings, you know, or poem readings, promoting the Vietnamese culture. So anyone can come, any organization can come and say, we would like to go to the Thai house and we would like to have a cultural event for the people of Vietnam. So this is not a tourism thing. What we do is we work together with the ethnic minority at the border to Laos.
I see.
I believe we are the only hotel in central Vietnam, if not all Vietnam, being not in the mountains. If you are in the mountains, you will obviously work with them. What we do is we have an agreement with the People's Committee there and with the military. The military gave a huge piece of land, which the ethnic minority turned into a farm, vegetables, but also animals, I mean meat and fish, and we guarantee we buy everything from them. So we're actually helping them economically by saying, you produce organic, fresh food for us. It's 3.5 hours drive away from here. Still better than you fly it in from somewhere, right?
Correct.
And you have a job and you have an income. We buy from you everything, guaranteed. So that we work together with streets in Hoi An. Streets is like Koto, you know, so we work together with them. So we're really trying to do things in that way where we can help the community.
Do you know that George, Mr. Tuấn also mentioned to me about this one? And actually, I like it very much because it not only just you make sure that you have healthy or organic product, but also you create the job and help the local people. Correct?
Absolutely. And you see, I mean, let's be just very honest. Nowadays, you go on LinkedIn or Facebook and you see all these posts from hoteliers about food farms. And some hotels do an excellent job, but some hotels you go to the food farm is 10 square meter, it's 30 square meter. You know, oh, we have our food farm, we have our own vegetables, and then you ask the question, how many vegetables you get there? Yeah, for 1 day per month. Or you have a bigger food farm, 5 days per month, you know. But we have a food farm and we are ecological. So that's greenwashing. You know, now, yes, we are in a very lucky position. I admit that. We have huge land, so we can have a huge food farm here. But actually, you can solve the problem. Go out, work with the minorities together. You know, you don't need to have your food farm, which doesn't serve 20% of the food you need. Go, create the food farm out there, and it gives you 80% of the food you need.
So that is why I like Furama, and I think that guests also who follow and watch our episode today, they will like also Furama. And I think that you have another press conference just is waiting for you. Even we have many things to talk, but I think that next time we have another podcast or episode to discuss more. Last questions. What is your plan in the future?
Well, just about the press conference, that's the Horefex. That's actually a hospitality conference for 2 days. 55 speakers, 15 nationalities coming from 8 countries. And again, talking about sustainability, 60% of the speakers are Vietnamese and 40% of the speakers are women. And we really paid attention to that. We wanted it to be international, but at the same time, we wanted the women and the Vietnamese to be fully part of it. It's going to be an amazing thing, definitely, and we're going to do that yearly. Now, my plans, you see, my plan is, as of now, to keep on doing everything a little bit better at the Furama, because I am not the kind of hotelier who moves every 2 years. I actually do not agree with this system that hoteliers are moving every 2 years. I question sometimes how much impact a hotelier has if he keeps on moving from one country to the other every 2 years. So I'm not one of them. I was with Pearl 5.5 years. I was in Malaysia in 2 hotels together 7 years. I was in Dubai in 1 hotel for 4 years. You know, now I'm here 2.5 years. I'm not the short-term person. I always say, number one, somebody who hires me, usually, not always, but usually, it's on long-term basis, number one. And number two, somebody who hires me has to understand I'm not a maintainer. I'm a mover and shaker. I want to do things a little bit better. I don't want to maintain things. That's me. And that are my plans.
So thank you very much for being with us today. And I hope to see you soon in the future. And I wish your upcoming event will be successful. And thank you for all the people who follow our Hotelier Vietnam. I wish all of you guys success in the hospitality. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was an absolutely pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.